The world in the year 2025 is a complex place. Many countries face challenges both inside their borders and in their relationships with other nations. International relations are constantly shifting, influenced by economic pressures, political changes, and ongoing conflicts. One area of significant global attention is the relationship between the United States and Ukraine, particularly the interactions between their leaders. Before we start, please remember that our channel is only for educational purposes. We don't support any particular viewpoint on this topic, and this is only for education. In the United States, Donald Trump began a new term as president. His approach to foreign policy is known for being direct and focused on what he sees as American interests. In Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky continues to lead the country amidst a long and difficult conflict with Russia. This conflict has had a major impact not only on Ukraine and Russia, but also on Europe and the wider world. The relationship between President Trump and President Zelensky is important for several reasons. Firstly, the United States is a powerful country with a significant role in global affairs. Its actions and policies can have wide-ranging effects. Ukraine, while geographically smaller, is located in a strategically important region and is at the center of a major international conflict. The way these two leaders interact and the agreements they reach can influence the course of the Russia-Ukraine war and have consequences for international stability. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine is a key backdrop to their relationship. This war has caused significant human suffering and has changed the political landscape of Europe. Finding a resolution to this conflict is a major international priority. The United States, under President Trump, has taken a role in trying to mediate and find a path towards peace. President Zelensky's government is focused on protecting Ukraine's sovereignty and seeking international support to achieve a just and lasting peace. This book explores the interactions between President Trump and President Zelensky during a critical period. It looks at their meetings, their discussions, and the agreements they attempted to forge. It examines the different perspectives they brought to the table and the challenges they faced in trying to find common ground. The aim is to provide a neutral and detailed account of their relationship, focusing on the key issues at stake and the potential outcomes of their interactions. Understanding the dynamics between these two leaders is crucial for understanding the broader international context. Their decisions and actions have implications for the future of Ukraine, for the relationship between the West and Russia, and for the overall stability of the international order. This chapter serves as an introduction to the complex and important story of the Trump-Zelensky relationship and its place in a world facing numerous challenges. It sets the stage for a closer look at the specific events and negotiations that unfolded, offering a balanced perspective on a relationship that has significant global importance. 2. The first meeting. In March 2025, President Zelensky of Ukraine arrived at the White House for his first official meeting with President Trump. This meeting was highly anticipated, given the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the United States' role in global affairs. President Trump greeted President Zelensky warmly, emphasizing the long-standing relationship between their two nations. Although he noted a past negotiation spat, which he described as having been resolved positively for both countries and even the world. President Trump began by highlighting what he called a very fair deal that was on the table. He mentioned the importance of accessing rare earth minerals, suggesting this was a key aspect of the agreement. He stated that this deal signified a big commitment from the United States and expressed his appreciation for working with Ukraine. The discussions quickly turned to the Russia-Ukraine war. President Trump mentioned having very good discussions with Russia and speaking directly with President Putin. He conveyed his intention to bring this to a close, stating it was something both he and President Zelensky desired. He indicated that the confines of a deal had been started and expressed optimism that something can happen. A major concern for President Trump was the number of casualties, noting the thousands of soldiers being killed on both sides. He expressed a desire to stop the fighting and redirect resources towards rebuilding. He contrasted his approach with the previous administration, claiming that the Biden administration had not engaged with Russia, implying his administration was taking a more proactive approach to diplomacy. President Trump praised the bravery of Ukrainian soldiers, acknowledging the prolonged nature of the conflict, which he said was supposed to be over very quickly. He gave tremendous credit to Ukrainian generals and soldiers for their resilience. He reiterated his desire to get it over with, stating, "It's enough, right?" President Zelensky responded to President Trump's welcome with gratitude for the invitation. He expressed his hope that the document being discussed would be a full step to real security guarantees for Ukraine, our people, our children. He emphasized his reliance on continued American support, stressing its importance for Ukraine. President Zelensky indicated his desire to discuss security guarantees further, acknowledging Europe's willingness to provide support, but wanting to understand the United States' position in detail. He appealed to President Trump to take a strong position to stop Putin, echoing President Trump's sentiment that enough with the war. President Zelensky voiced his firm stance of no compromises with the killer about our territories, indicating a red line in any negotiations. He then brought up the topic of drone production, stating Ukraine had developed very good drone production, "I think the best one in the world for today." He offered to share licenses for drone technology with the United States in exchange for licenses for the best air defense in the world, which he stated Ukraine urgently needed. He highlighted the help Ukraine had already received in air defense against Russian attacks and wanted to explore further cooperation in this area. President Zelensky also mentioned the potential for LNG terminals in Ukraine as part of future agreements, emphasizing the importance of energy security for Ukraine and Europe. He pointed out Ukraine's large gas storage capacity and its potential use for LNG. He acknowledged the support from European partners, while noting President Trump's earlier comment about Europe's financial contribution compared to the U.S. During the public statements, a question was raised about historical comparisons. When asked if he associated himself with any famous historical figures, President Trump mentioned George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, then jokingly claimed to be far superior, before clarifying it was a joke to avoid misinterpretation by the media. He stated he was focused on doing a job and highlighted the accomplishments of his first month in office, including efforts to stop the war and get them back to normalization. He reiterated his belief that the war should have never started. President Zelensky, when asked if he believed President Trump was on Ukraine's side, affirmed his belief in continued U.S. support, calling it crucial and important for us. He emphasized that Russia had started the war by invading Ukrainian territory, and that the key question was whether President Trump could stop Putin and ensure the withdrawal of Russian troops. He expressed his hope that if President Trump brought peace, he would be remembered historically for it. The initial meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky set a tone of cautious optimism. Both leaders expressed a desire to end the conflict in Ukraine and reach an agreement. While President Trump focused on deal-making and ending the war quickly, President Zelensky emphasized security guarantees and unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty. The public statements provided a glimpse into their initial positions and priorities as they embarked on discussions aimed at resolving a complex and ongoing international crisis. 3. The agreement talks. The discussions moved to the details of a possible agreement between the United States and Ukraine. This agreement was planned to cover important areas for both countries, especially rare earth minerals and security. President Trump explained that the agreement was a very fair deal. He mentioned that the U.S. was interested in accessing rare earth minerals in Ukraine. These minerals are important for making high-tech products and weapons. For the United States, this deal meant a big commitment and a chance to work closely with Ukraine. President Zelensky's main focus was on security. He hoped the agreement would be a full step to real security guarantees for Ukraine. For Ukraine, American support was very important to continue. Zelensky wanted to discuss the specifics of security guarantees from the United States. He mentioned that Europe was ready to offer some security support, but he needed to know what the United States would do. Zelensky also spoke about the ongoing war with Russia. He emphasized the need to stop Putin. He said that any peace must ensure Ukraine's safety, values, freedom, and democracy. He stated clearly that there would be no compromises with the killer about our territories. The talks also touched upon business and resources. Zelensky highlighted a point in the agreement about LNG terminals in Ukraine. He explained that Ukraine had never had LNG terminals before, and this agreement could change that. He also mentioned Ukraine's large gas storage facilities, the biggest in Europe, which could be used for LNG. This was seen as important for both Ukrainian and European energy security. President Trump talked about the need to stop the fighting and save lives. He mentioned the thousands of soldiers dying on both sides. He expressed his wish to see the money spent on rebuilding instead of war. Trump stated that his administration had started very good discussions with Russia to try and end the war. He believed a deal was possible and that they had started the confines of a deal. Another topic of discussion was military equipment. Trump praised the unbelievably brave Ukrainian soldiers and mentioned the great equipment the U.S. had given them. Zelensky, in turn, spoke about Ukraine's drone production, which he considered the best one in the world. He offered to share drone technology licenses with the U.S. He also asked for licenses for quick production of air defense systems in Ukraine, even after the war. President Trump mentioned that he was acting as a mediator to help reach an agreement between Ukraine and Russia. He stated that you're going to have to always make compromises to make a deal. He hoped the compromises would not be too big. He described the war as vicious and the battlefield as level, meaning there was little natural protection for soldiers. He said his goal was to get everybody at the table and get an agreement. Both leaders expressed a desire to end the war. Trump said, "We want to get it over with. It's enough, right? We want to get it over with." Zelensky agreed, saying enough with the war was very important. However, Zelensky also stressed the need for security guarantees, beyond just a ceasefire, referring to past broken agreements with Russia. The agreement talks showed that both sides had different priorities. Ukraine was focused on strong security guarantees and ending the war on terms that protected its territory and freedom. The United States was interested in securing rare earth minerals, mediating peace, and ensuring the deal was beneficial for American interests. Balancing these different demands was a key challenge in the ongoing agreement talks. 4. War and soldiers. The discussions moved to the difficult topic of the ongoing war. President Trump spoke about the large number of soldiers dying in the conflict. He mentioned that thousands of soldiers were being killed on both sides, Ukrainian and Russian. He expressed a desire to stop the fighting and reduce these losses. President Zelensky acknowledged the heavy cost of the war. He praised the Ukrainian soldiers for their great bravery. He highlighted that they were fighting with courage, even though the war had been going on for a long time, much longer than initially expected. He also mentioned that Ukraine had received good equipment, implying the need for continued support in this area. President Trump agreed that Ukrainian soldiers had shown incredible bravery. He gave credit to both the soldiers and the generals for their strength in what he described as very hard and tough fighting. He recognized that the opposing side also had strong fighters, making it a very serious and dangerous situation. Both leaders expressed a wish to end the war. President Trump stated that it was time to stop the conflict and focus on other things. He suggested that the money being spent on the war could be used for better purposes, like rebuilding. He mentioned the idea of shifting funds from military actions to reconstruction efforts once the fighting stopped. President Zelensky agreed that ending the war was important. He emphasized the need to save his country, its values, freedom, and democracy. He spoke about the importance of security guarantees for Ukraine and its people. He stressed that a simple ceasefire might not be enough without these guarantees, as previous attempts at peace had failed. President Trump spoke about his conversations with President Putin of Russia. He said they had discussed ways to bring the war to an end. He mentioned that both he and President Putin wanted the war to stop. He believed that they were starting to see the outlines of a possible agreement. However, President Zelensky made it clear that there would be no compromises on Ukrainian territory. This difference in approach highlighted the complex challenge of reaching a peace agreement acceptable to both Ukraine and Russia. President Trump described the war as vicious and noted the lack of protection on the battlefield. He spoke about the heavy human cost, where young human bodies were often the only things stopping bullets. This imagery emphasized the brutal reality of the conflict and the urgent need to find a resolution to stop the deaths and destruction. President Trump stated his hope to be remembered as a peacemaker. He said his main goal was to save lives and that saving money, while also important, was secondary to stopping the loss of life. He acknowledged the dangerous nature of the situation, suggesting it could potentially escalate further if not resolved. The emotional weight of the ongoing conflict was clear in the discussions. Both leaders recognized the immense human suffering and the urgent need to find a way to stop the fighting and move towards peace and rebuilding. 5. Dealing with Russia. In the discussions between President Trump and President Zelensky, Russia was a central topic. President Trump made it clear from the beginning that he wanted to find a way to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. He mentioned having very good discussions with Russia and speaking directly with President Putin. Trump stated his belief that both Ukraine and Russia wanted the conflict to end, saying, "It's something that you want and that he wants." Trump presented himself as a mediator, aiming to bring this to a close. He emphasized the heavy losses of soldiers on both sides and the need to stop the fighting. He pointed out the large number of casualties, stating, "They're losing thousands of soldiers on both sides. We're losing a lot of soldiers, and we want to see it stop." Trump suggested that the money spent on the war could be used for rebuilding instead. President Trump criticized the previous administration for not engaging with Russia, saying, "Until we came along, the Biden administration didn't speak to Russia whatsoever." He contrasted his approach, highlighting his direct communication with Putin as a key difference. He also claimed that the war would have never happened if he had been president earlier, suggesting he could have negotiated a deal to prevent the conflict. However, President Zelensky's perspective on dealing with Russia was different. While he expressed hope that President Trump could stop Putin, his statements revealed a deep mistrust of the Russian leader. Zelensky referred to Putin as a killer and terrorist. He stressed the importance of no compromises with the killer about our territories. This firm stance indicated Ukraine's unwillingness to give up any land in exchange for peace. Zelensky emphasized that Russia started the war by invading Ukraine. He stated, "Putin president speaks about the people and the soldiers, which had died, but they came to our territory. They came to our land. They began this war, and they have to stop." For Zelensky, the key issue was Russia withdrawing its troops from Ukrainian land. He hoped that President Trump, with the help of allies, could achieve this. During a press conference, when asked about compromises, President Trump acknowledged that you're going to have to always make compromises to reach a deal. He positioned himself as an arbitrator, as a mediator between Ukraine and Russia. However, Zelensky's firm position against territorial compromises created tension. He stated clearly, there would be no compromises with Russia concerning Ukrainian territory. This difference in approach was evident. President Trump seemed focused on achieving a deal quickly to stop the fighting and reduce casualties, suggesting compromises might be necessary. President Zelensky, while desiring peace, prioritized the territorial integrity of Ukraine and viewed Putin with deep suspicion, making compromises with him seem unacceptable. This difference in viewpoints presented a significant challenge in dealing with Russia and finding a path towards peace that both sides could agree on. The discussions highlighted the complexities of negotiating an end to the war, with Ukraine insisting on firm principles and the U.S. seeking a resolution through diplomatic means, even if it involved difficult compromises. 6. Business and resources. A significant part of the discussions between President Trump and President Zelensky focused on business and resources. Both leaders saw potential benefits for their countries in these areas. This chapter will look at the plans and ideas that were discussed. One key area of interest for President Trump was rare earth minerals in Ukraine. He mentioned this publicly, saying it was a reason for the United States to be involved in Ukraine. Rare earth minerals are important for making many modern products, including electronics and weapons. Having access to these resources could be good for the U.S. economy and its security. President Trump spoke about digging and working to get these resources, suggesting a long-term project. President Zelensky also brought important business ideas to the table. He talked about liquefied natural gas, or LNG, terminals for Ukraine. Ukraine currently did not have these terminals. LNG terminals would allow Ukraine to receive and process LNG, which is natural gas that has been turned into a liquid for easier transport. This could help Ukraine become more energy independent and potentially supply gas to Europe. Ukraine also has large gas storage facilities, the biggest in Europe, according to President Zelensky. He suggested that these storage facilities could be used for LNG. This could make Ukraine a key location for gas storage and distribution in Europe, improving European energy security. President Zelensky saw this as a way for Ukraine to help Europe, which he noted had been supportive of Ukraine. Another area of business discussion was technology, specifically military technology. President Zelensky offered to share licenses for drone production with the United States. He stated that Ukraine has very good drone technology, developed during the war. Sharing this technology could be beneficial for the U.S., giving them access to Ukrainian drone expertise. In return, President Zelensky asked for licenses for air defense systems from the United States. He emphasized that Ukraine needed air defense to protect itself from attacks. He pointed out that the U.S. has the best air defense systems in the world. This suggests a potential technology exchange where both countries could gain valuable military capabilities. President Trump also mentioned high-tech things and weaponry as part of the agreement. He said that the agreement meant a big investment from the United States in Ukraine. This implies that the business deals were not just about resources, but also about developing industries and military capabilities in both countries. He suggested that the weaponry could be used by the U.S. in many locations, indicating a broader strategic interest beyond just Ukraine. These business and resource discussions carried both potential economic benefits and risks. For Ukraine, these deals could bring investment, new technologies, and improved energy security. For the United States, access to rare earth minerals and new military technologies were potential advantages. However, any economic agreement tied to a country at war also carries risks. The ongoing conflict could disrupt business activities and investments. Political changes or disagreements could also affect the agreements in the future. Despite these risks, both presidents seem to see the potential for significant economic and strategic gains from cooperation in business and resources. These discussions were a central part of their meetings, showing the importance of economic factors alongside the ongoing war and security concerns. 7. The breaking point. The Oval Office press conference began with a seemingly positive atmosphere. President Trump and President Zelensky sat side by side, facing a room full of journalists. Trump started by praising the agreement and the potential for peace. He spoke about his conversations with President Putin and his hope to end the war. Zelensky, in turn, thanked Trump for the invitation and expressed his hope for strong security guarantees for Ukraine. However, the tone shifted when questions from the press began. A journalist asked about compromises, and Trump responded that Zelensky would need to make them. Zelensky, in his answers, emphasized the need for security guarantees and the unacceptability of compromises on Ukrainian territory. He spoke passionately about the war and the suffering of his people. The tension became palpable when Trump directly addressed Zelensky. He stated that the United States had provided significant military equipment and financial support to Ukraine. He felt Ukraine was not showing enough gratitude for this support. "You have to be thankful," Trump said, his voice hardening. "Have the cards. You're buried there. You people are dying. So just listen." Zelensky defended Ukraine's position. He spoke of the sacrifices Ukrainians were making and the importance of their fight for freedom and democracy. He reminded everyone that Russia had started the war and occupied Ukrainian territory. He pointed out that Ukraine had been fighting for years, even before Trump's presidency, and had faced broken agreements and continued aggression from Russia. Vice President Vance intervened, echoing Trump's sentiment. He criticized Zelensky for what he perceived as a lack of appreciation and for bringing disagreements into the public forum of the Oval Office. Vance argued that the U.S. was trying to help Ukraine and deserved gratitude, not criticism. The exchange grew increasingly heated. Trump accused Zelensky of not being ready for peace and of focusing too much on what the U.S. could do for Ukraine, rather than being thankful for what had already been done. He repeatedly emphasized the amount of aid the U.S. had given. Zelensky, while acknowledging some gratitude, insisted on the need for concrete security guarantees and a strong stance against Russia. He argued that a simple ceasefire without real security would not be enough, citing past broken agreements with Putin. The atmosphere in the Oval Office became thick with unspoken words and rising anger. The planned joint news conference in the East Room after lunch was suddenly in doubt. The initial show of unity had dissolved into open disagreement and accusations. As the press conference concluded, the tension remained. Reporters noticed a change in the schedule. The lunch between the two presidents still took place, but the joint news conference was abruptly canceled. Shortly after, President Zelensky was seen leaving the White House without President Trump. News quickly spread that the joint news conference was off. President Trump released a statement on social media, declaring that he had determined President Zelensky was not ready for peace. He suggested Zelensky felt U.S. involvement gave him an unfair advantage in negotiations, and stated that he, Trump, wanted peace, not advantage. He concluded that Zelensky could come back when he is ready for peace. The cancellation of the joint news conference and the public fallout marked a clear breaking point in the relationship. What had started as a meeting aimed at solidifying an agreement and promoting peace had ended in public disagreement and uncertainty about the future of U.S.-Ukraine relations. The hope for a united front seemed to have crumbled under the weight of differing perspectives and rising tensions in the Oval Office. 8. What happens next? After the tense meeting in the Oval Office, things changed quickly. President Trump made a public statement. He said that President Zelensky was not ready for peace. Trump explained that he felt Zelensky believed American support gave him an advantage in talks. Trump stated he was not looking for advantages, but for peace. He added that Zelensky could come back when he is ready for peace. These words created a feeling of uncertainty. Just moments after the meeting ended, President Zelensky left the White House. The planned joint news conference was canceled. Reporters and officials were surprised by the sudden change in events. The future of the relationship between the United States and Ukraine was now unclear. Zelensky's departure from Washington left many questions unanswered. Would the agreement they had discussed still happen? What would happen to the promised American support for Ukraine? The discussions had seemed to be moving forward, but now everything was in doubt. For Ukraine, the situation was serious. The country was still in the middle of a difficult war. American support was seen as very important for their defense and future security. Without a clear agreement and continued support, Ukraine faced a more challenging path. In Russia, the reaction to the events in Washington was likely being watched closely. The breakdown in communication between the U.S. and Ukraine could be seen in different ways. Some might see it as a sign of weakness in Ukraine's position. Others might see it as a chance to push for their own goals in the conflict. The possibility of peace, which had seemed closer just hours before, now felt distant again. The disagreement between Trump and Zelensky showed how difficult it was to find common ground. Each leader had their own priorities and perspectives. Trump focused on making a deal and ending the conflict quickly. Zelensky emphasized the need for strong security guarantees and no compromises on Ukrainian territory. The breakdown in talks raised concerns about what would happen next on the ground in Ukraine. Would the fighting continue? Would it become more intense? Without a clear diplomatic path forward, the focus might shift back to the battlefield. The human cost of the conflict, with soldiers and civilians suffering, remained a heavy concern. For both President Trump and President Zelensky, this moment could shape their legacies. Trump had aimed to be seen as a peacemaker, someone who could resolve complex international conflicts. The failure to reach a clear agreement with Ukraine, at least for now, could affect this image. Zelensky, on the other hand, had presented himself as a strong defender of his nation, unwilling to back down. The events in Washington might be seen as a test of his resolve and leadership. The path forward is unclear, and the stakes remain very high for everyone involved.
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank